How are you, folks? We're sponsored today by Colony, USA Network's new original series from the executive producer of Lost. Imagine an occupied world where everyone must choose a side. If your city was no longer your own, who would you trust with your life? Where would you run, and what would you risk to save the ones you love? Starring Josh Holloway from Lost and Sarah Wayne Callies from The Walking Dead. Colony, a new original series, premieres Thursday, January 14th at 10, 9 Central, only on USA Network. Go to colonytv.com for more. Yes, today's episode is also sponsored by Squarespace. Squarespace is the easiest way to create a beautiful website, blog, or online store for you and your ideas. Squarespace features an elegant interface, beautiful templates, and incredible 24/7 customer support. Start building your website today at squarespace.com. Enter offer code WTF at checkout to get 10% off. Squarespace. Build it beautiful. All right, let's do the show.
Lock the gate!
All right, let's do this. How are you, what the fuckers, what the fuck buddies, what the fucking ears, what the fucksters, what the fuckadelics, what the fuck is happening? How are you? This is Marc Maron. This is my show. This is WTF, the podcast. I'm broadcasting today from a snowed-in room in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's not. I do not think that it's any similar. I don't think it's similar at all to The Hateful Eight, which I have not seen yet. But apparently, there's a situation where there are several characters snowed in and it gets a little rough. That's all I know about that movie. There's a weather situation and then shit hits the fan in many different bloody ways. I am going to see the film, but I have not. This does not seem to be happening. What do we got going on? Let's just try to stay in the moment here. I have Neil Strauss on the show today. Now, Neil Strauss wrote a book that caused a little trouble for some people, but I think some people got a lot out of it. It was a relatively controversial book a few years ago called The Game. It was an investigative piece that began as an investigative piece. He went into the world of pickup artists, the secret societies of these men who have an angle and a system, and basically, I guess the idea is to have sex with the women. Now, there was a lot of wrong about this whole idea, and there was a lot of flack, but, it kind of took Neil in a direction he didn't really anticipate, and moved him through a world and through a series of behaviors that he is not necessarily proud of. Now, you have to understand, I met Neil when he was this very quiet, nebbishy Jewish writer hanging around the alternative comedy scene back in the early 90s or mid-90s. And when I heard he'd written that book, I was like, is that the same fucking guy? How is that the same guy? What did he be? That guy? Come on. So now he's written a new book called The Truth, which is basically, I believe, his recovery from the game. That whatever, he went through emotionally and sexually and personality-wise through getting sucked into the game, it has hit the wall. And now he has this new book called The Truth, an uncomfortable book about relationships. And I have a very candid, intense, loaded conversation with Neil, who knows some things about me in the past, and has his experience of what I was like back. And they interviewed me actually for a piece he was writing back in the mid '90s, but also just sort of moving through what he learned about relationships and himself in the process of writing this newest book. I was very excited to talk to him, and it was a very intense conversation. So look forward to that coming around the bend here. Building a website can be tough, and even if you know your way around coding, creating something that looks good and works well is a time-consuming affair, people, whether it's for a business site, a portfolio, a restaurant, or whatever else. In this day and age, you need one, and you need it done right. Well, lucky for us, Squarespace makes it easy to build websites without breaking a sweat. Squarespace helps you make simple, powerful, and beautiful websites that look professionally designed regardless of your skill level. No coding required. Not only does Squarespace provide you with intuitive and easy-to-use tools to create your website with. Squarespace also has a state-of-the-art technology powering your site, so you'll have security and stability. Squarespace gives you 24/7 online support, so you're always taken care of if you need some help. What are you waiting for, folks? Start a trial with no credit card required and start building your website today. When you decide to sign up at squarespace.com, make sure to use the offer code WTF to get 10% off your first purchase and to show your support for the show. Did you hear me go all the way up on that? We thank Squarespace for their support in 2015. Now it's time for you to use Squarespace in 2016. Squarespace. Build it beautiful. So I've been in Albuquerque, my hometown, for a couple of days. As some of you know, I was up in Santa Fe enjoying the spa relaxation life. And then we come down to Albuquerque. Now, as some of you know, I grew up here. Born in New Jersey, moved to Alaska, Albuquerque, 71, 72. Started here in third grade. My life began in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So I chose to do something that I don't usually do. I mean, I see a couple of the people I know from when I grew up, Dave Kleinfeld, Devin Jackson, a couple people, Sam Howarth. I see some friends that, that I've kept in contact with for the last 40 years, 35 years. And, but I never really did the, let's go look at the elementary school. Let's go look at the first house I lived in when we moved here. Let's go do that. Let me drag my girlfriend through some sort of This Is Your Life episode where I sit in front of structures and try to connect emotionally and memory-wise with my past. And what I sort of learned was, I learned something about myself. What memories do you have as a person? Because those will sort of dictate, or at least should be a window in how your brain works. Are the memories that you hold on to the shitty ones? Or are they the like, wow, that was the best time of my life? Or I remember that one time where I almost lost my finger. Like, what kind of person are you? Are you the like, I remember that one time that the car almost, or are you the person that's sort of like, oh, that was the best thing that ever happened to me? As you could imagine, I tend towards the finger loss type of memories. But not so much. They still reveal things, I mean, I went to my elementary school where I went from 3rd to 5th grade. And then moved to a private institution, the groovy hipster sort of hippie private school for 5th and 6th grade. But I remember 3rd and 4th grade, but there's weird memories that happen. I'm just sitting there. I'm looking at this playground where I sort of wandered. I walked down the street. It was right at the end of my block, Mark Twain Elementary. But I remember walking down to school, and the memories that sort of flooded back, there was a couple. One of them was, I remember spending time during recess and helping the special needs kids. I just remember doing that, and I remember there was this very profound moment where a severely mentally challenged guy who I was playing football with, tackled me with a force and energy that was astounding and made me cry. But he couldn't have been more excited about it. It's just, I don't know what I learned in that moment, but it was something about being a person and the sort of the sort of differences in minds but I kept working with them and I'd go over there and play with them and get them laughing. So that was sort of one of my first sort of gigs as an entertainer and decent person, was helping the intellectually and mentally challenged have a fun recess. I remember that. I remember breaking my leg because my dad adjusted my bindings too tight and having a full leg cast and not being able to go to lunch. And my girlfriend in 4th grade, Elizabeth, used to come and eat lunch with me alone in the room. That's sort of a nice memory. It'd be nicer without the broken leg, but whatever. I remember I had a Roadrunner lunchbox, which I thought was stupid. And one day, and all the other kids had better lunchboxes. I don't even know what kind I really wanted. But I remember I kicked it all the way home until it just broke and the lid broke off. And I told my mother the big kids got me. The big kids did this to my Roadrunner lunchbox. That was their sole focus. She didn't buy it, and I ended up never having another lunchbox, just brown bagging it. So those were the lessons in elementary school. Pretty exciting stuff, right, folks? Right? And then we went to my old house. Very few memories in the old house. I have some trying to mow the lawn, but I didn't understand how to mow a lawn, that you had to do it in lines. I just kind of randomly mowed the lawn around in a circle until my neighbor Gary said you got to mow it in lines. That was a big lesson. I remember Old English sheepdogs. I remember a Janis Joplin record, a Melanie record, a James Taylor record. I remember telling the Latino maid, that my cleaning lady that my parents had hired, who did not speak any English, that she was using the wrong detergent in the dishwasher and she needed to use dish soap. And then we had a kitchen full of about a foot of foam and bubbles. And that was not a good day for her or me, but I copped to it. I guess the bottom line is, it's good to be home. It was good to see a couple of old friends. I feel very comfortable here, but sometimes when I come out here with people, I don't always know, like it's overly emotional. There's no way you're not going to get a little tweaked out revisiting your childhood and wondering, and then seeing people that you knew back then now, who were your friends since second grade, third grade, and now we're 52, 53 years old. It's hard. There's a weird beauty to it, but there's also a little bit of heartbreak to it. Like, hey, we're still alive, we're doing okay, but man, you know, if I don't see you for a couple years, one of us might be using a cane. I don't know, man. It's a little heavy, but I guess this is what life is. If you've been thinking about your home security, there's no better time to get it than right now. You've heard me tell you about Simply Safe Home Security. They offer the best protection, period. And Simply Safe has worked to put together a massive security arsenal for you, the WTF listener. It's a special package created just for people listening to this show. It's got entry sensors, motion sensors, glass break sensors, everything you need to stop the bad stuff from going down and to give you peace of mind about your home. And right now, for the end of the year, the fine folks at Simply Safe are giving you, my listeners, a great offer. Seriously, we've got a lot of discount codes for this show, but Simply Safe is really going above and beyond. You'll get $100 off this package. That's complete protection for your home, handpicked by the experts, and an amazing discount. Simply Safe is already the best value in home security with no contracts and no commitments. But right now, get $100 off this custom security package. Go to simplysafewtf.com to save $100 right now. That's simplysafewtf.com. Do it now. Get secured. Feel secure in your home. I can't really tell you how to feel secure in your body. That is a lifelong project. Season 3 of Maron premieres on Netflix today. Today. If today is the 28th, this is the day. You can watch Season 3 of my IFC show Maron on Netflix. It's a good season. It's very exciting. It'll set you up for the season we're about to do. It gets pretty heavy at the end. Enjoy it. Watch it. It's your time to do that. All right. So right now, let's go to my conversation with Neil Strauss. His book, The Truth, an uncomfortable book about relationships, is available now. And this is an intense conversation. So I hope you dig it. Like, I don't think I've seen you in 20 years.
I was on your Air America show.
Right.
I don't know, maybe that was 10 years ago. But it was kind of like you weren't really there. You didn't really have a conversation.
It was so early in the morning, too.
It was early in the morning. I don't know if you were where you were at doing it.
Did you come in live or were you on the phone?
No, I came in live.
So, like, it was that morning show at Air America? Like, it's between 6 and 9 you came in?
Yeah, but we already had more connection here in 20 seconds than we did there.
Oh, well, it was crazy there, dude.
Yeah, it was crazy.
You're in real time. You're half awake.
Right.
Like, I remember you hanging around Luna Lounge when you were writing for what, Spin?
New York Times.
New York Times. Was that? Oh, did you write that piece about alternative comedy in the Times? That was the piece that Lorne Michaels had read.
Oh, no way. Oh, it all comes back to Lorne Michaels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, that was the piece where, I think he had read, because he said, I don't know what you think you're doing down there below 14th Street. But it doesn't mean it. But that was that piece. There was a picture of me, Ross Broccoli, and Jeff Ross.
That's it.
In the piece.
Yeah.
And that was the big, that was putting it on the map.
Yeah.
Alt comedy was on the map because of Neil Strauss.
And I remember I came to the thing and you're like, this is the guy who ruined the scene. You singled me out.
I did?
Yeah.
You came to the show after that?
Yeah.
But I remember we talked, and I remember talking to you, and you were kind of like, you barely could talk for some, sort of like.
So true. I was just so nervous.
Yeah, you were very nervous, and And then, like, I remember, what was the first big ghostwriting job you had? Was it Manson?
Yeah, Marilyn Manson.
So then I heard, like, Neil Strauss co-wrote this huge book of Marilyn Manson. I'm like, that fucking guy?
Right.
That guy can't even talk.
I think it was disarming. They had nothing to fear from me. It was very disarming, maybe.
What is that process of ghostwriting? How does that work?
Oh, it's the best. You just hang out in their world as much as you can, and absorb as much of their life as you can, and then when they're ready, you talk. So sometimes, after a show, Manson would be doing a bunch of he'd want to do a bunch of coke and then talk all night, and record them all night,
right?
Or other time, you just sort of embedded yourself in your world and waited for those moments and observed the moment. So, for example, he'd have his bodyguard guard the bathroom door while he did coke in the bathroom. Right. So you'd watch that, and that would become a little detail that would inform the story. And
did he let you put all that in?
Yeah, I wouldn't write a book with someone if they had anything to hold back.
Oh, really?
What. Yeah, that's the rule.
So, but you don't get final edit. You just get an agreement.
You get an agreement, but I also I make some agreements up front. I say if you're going to take anything out, you have to put something better back in.
That's a little broad, but it usually works.
It usually works, and also I try to write it well enough that even if they're resistant when they tell me, they read it and they're like, "Oh, this has to stay."
And you were factual.
Yeah, always. Yeah. The only thing you change is stuff for legal reasons, and you'll maybe change someone's name or their details.
So you had to sit there and watch Marilyn Manson do coke a lot.
A lot of coke.
And indulge that.
Right. And home movies. It was fun because as a journalist, people only show you exactly what they want to show you because they know you're writing.
Right.
But when they know they have the approval, they show you everything. So seeing
sure. And when they're on coke, you get more than you hope for.
You get more than some nights. It's really weird. Rock stars are so here's the crazy thing. Like, you might call to do an interview and everybody seems so busy.
Yeah.
But in most of their life, they're completely bored doing nothing.
Yeah.
So I remember some nights, like, we'd be bored and he'd dress up in this giant chicken outfit. Yeah. And we'd go down to Sunset Boulevard and he'd chase people in a chicken suit.
For no reason.
For no reason. No one would know this giant chicken that just chased him was Marilyn Manson.
And he's all jacked up on blow?
Yeah. Or we'd have like 4... I don't remember those DVDs or videos back then, but we'd watch like 4 movies in like 10 minutes because we were so coked up.
Oh, right. Oh, just fast forwarding to the good part?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, when you do that stuff, did you do blow with him?
It's a great question. So my first night out with him, he had this CD case, which is what you did it on back then.
Sure.
Right? Really dates it.
Yeah.
But depending on what you have CDs right here, though.
Yeah.
So, and he said, "Do the dust."
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure if was it coke or was it angel dust?
No.
I didn't know. Well, I was kind of naive.
Yeah.
But I wanted to fit in. I wanted to not make them feel weird.
Yeah.
So I did the move where I kind of bent down, but I kind of blew it a little bit to get it off the tray and look like it went on my nose and it went all over the floor. It was a mess.
He knew though, right?
Yeah.
He's like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
And you're like, "I don't do this."
It's a party fall. But eventually, like, I would do enough. I would do a little bit. I mean, to me, it's like coffee. It was like coffee.
Oh, so you didn't do too much to where because I imagine you strike me as, well, I don't know if it's introverted, but slightly neurotic. I can't imagine you in a panic situation.
Yeah, totally neurotic. I'm not good with like psychedelics. Those are the worst. So, but I remember one night I was doing a little bit more with them and I noticed I was losing my temper more often. I would be temperamental, edgy.
Yeah.
So I went to the guys. I'm like, you know what? I've been losing my temper a lot. I don't think maybe it's because of the coke or something.
Yeah.
And one of the guys looks at me and goes, "That's the best part."
Yeah.
And that was the last time I did it.
They were using you as a clown. They were.
No, they were. They totally were. I remember like a high point in my maturity came after I'd kind of done the game.
Yeah.
And I went over to Manson's birthday party and he had a giant sperm outfit and he said, "Will you dress up in the sperm outfit and dance around?"
Yeah.
And I said no. And that was like a big moment for me that I wasn't their clown anymore.
Oh, look at you speaking up for yourself.
Exactly.
I will not put the sperm outfit on. So after that, you did the Jameson book?
After that I did the Motley Crue book.
Right.
And by the way, we got to go back at some point to Luna Lounge because I want to talk about my impressions of you back there as well. But so let's make sure we get back there.
Let's start there because once you did the Manson book, I was so amazed and slightly resentful that somehow or another this mousy little fuck had figured out a way to make it.
I love it. I really had no idea I would be one of the people you resented. Well, I'm proud to be amongst the small, the powerful contingent.
Well, I always liked you, but like there's always a slight distrust for journalists in general. So like, maybe at that time I had, I was sort of, I don't know why I would have thought you ruined it, but maybe I thought because you brought attention to it because it did get quite overwhelming after that.
Yeah.
There were lines out the door and it became a little crazy, but I don't think I really resented you. I was just sort of amazed that you'd figured this thing out. Like, I never know what a writer's trajectory is. And I don't know that I would have understood, music journalists and that, doing what you do is actually a good call and a good way to earn a living and also, continue writing,
right.
To do those type of ghostwriting things. I thought it was pretty impressive. So I probably just resented you because of your success.
Right. No, exactly. Exactly.
But I remember you had hair.
Right. Yeah. I had hair.
And you had a kind of little beard and wireframe glasses,
right.
not as bold as the glasses you have now.
Right.
The confidence you're exuding with your new frames.
That's exactly it.
What were your impressions?
So I remember going to that scene and you were like the
sweaty
master, but you're not. See, you see yourself as sweaty, but I see yourself as like kind of the master of that scene because you hosted the whole show.
Yeah,
most of them.
I think so. A lot of them, I guess, I did.
And I remember after I did this story, I decided I got so into comedy, seeing this, and you've talked about the show all the time, so I don't need to go over what it is, but so many incredible people were there. Like what you were doing was so enjoyable. I never liked stand-up comedy till I went to the Luna Lounge and saw those shows. And I was covering music. I went to the New York Times. I said, we got to cover comedy. Like, there are all these incredible, talented people. And I got so obsessed that I did an article afterward where I went undercover 6 months to try and make it as a comic. And I did one show at Luna, and that was like kind of the highlight of it. And I remember I was looking over my notes before I came here, and I said, I'm terrified because in one phrase, like Marc Maron could eviscerate me, and and that was my biggest fear. Was I said, I know I can do this. I know I got it handled.
This is when you were going to Luna.
Yeah. This is when I was doing that one show. I was worried in a phrase he would just.
Was I even there?
You were there. Yeah, you were hosting.
And I brought you up.
Yeah.
Well, that would have made me mad at you.
Right.
How'd you do?
I did fine. Like I got laughs. It was fine. I didn't bomb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's good. I don't remember that article though.
I'll get it to you. Yeah. I kind of went undercover and did the whole, cause I realized like it was just the hardest way to make it in any kind of form of entertainment is comedy. Cause you're used by the clubs who just use you to make money at pre-shows. And it was fascinating.
You had this quality then that you could kind of zelig a little bit, and you were willing to take some risks in sort of a gonzo fashion to get your story.
Right.
So let's go through, like, what did you learn from the Manson experience?
Sure. And, so from the Manson, I think he really taught me how to write in a lot of ways, in the sense that it had to be interesting. You didn't have to tell everything, just tell the interesting parts. He was also a writer, so he would, of all the people I worked with, he would call me up and suggest phrases, because you always think the ghostwriter wrote it all.
Right.
But he'd call me up and he's like, I just thought of this metaphor, like the blades of grass squished brown by the wheels of lawn chair furniture. And I'd be like, okay, I'll get that in there.
Somewhere. I'll put that in.
Yeah.
Here, thanks for your contribution.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm trying to edit 9 hours of Coke talk.
Right, exactly. That's pretty much it. And then there was like he had this section of the book called The Rules, which are the rules for whether, rules for cheating when it's not cheating doesn't count. So he might call from Spain and say, well, here's a reason where it's not cheating. It's not cheating if you have sex with her in another country, then you call your girlfriend in the States before the time zone has caught up.
Well, that's,
because that means it hasn't happened yet. So it's okay. Or he'd call from South America and say, if she has a tattoo of you on her, it's just common courtesy to have sex with her.
And is he still with the woman he was cheating on?
No, he's gone through many since then.
Well, that must have planted into your head, given the future that became you. I imagine that once you took the shift from rock and roll into Jenna Jameson's wife, that must have had some impact on what became your future.
Yeah, I think all along I was trying to put myself in the way of sex so I could have some, right?
Yeah.
So with Motley Crue, I just thought if I can go on the road with Motley Crue, I'm going to finally get sex.
But you had no game.
No game. It was, and literally, I mean,
I still can't imagine you having game.
Right. Thank you. But it's the guy who's goes under the radar. That's the best. But thank you. I mean, I don't, if I came in and I looked like a guy who had game, like, that's probably the most unlikable guy you can imagine. So I'd go backstage and there'd be a road case. I get a stack of backstage passes during the show.
Yeah.
And I kind of hand them out to women.
Right.
And then they say thank you.
And then they go try to fuck the star.
Yeah. And I wouldn't figure, so I couldn't figure out when am I supposed to, how does the sex happen for me?
Yeah. You were still a clown, weren't you?
Yeah, pretty much.
You were the guy that you go find the hottest women and you'd be like, hey, you want to come backstage? And they're like, yeah, thank you, loser.
Yeah, exactly. But I didn't have, but also it's like I didn't want to be the dick who's like, okay, if you get this, if you
well
know,
me.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that's.
You never did that.
I don't think I could ever do that. Could you?
Huh. No.
Yeah.
I can't, no. I can't.
I wouldn't get, there would be no pleasure in it. I wouldn't even be able to get, I would feel like such a shithead.
I have a very hard time with, I require somewhat of a slightly deeper connection than just, using somebody to masturbate with or, to complete objectification. I've never been that good at it. I need to feel like we're connecting somehow.
Yeah, that's a nice thing, right?
It is a nice thing, but that can be problematic too, because if you need that and you find it, but then right afterwards you're still sort of like, all right, well, I guess I'm done.
Right.
And you've connected in that way with another person. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean it's lasting. And I think the results could be worse if the emotions are felt.
And what do you mean by that? The results can be worse if the emotions are felt?
Well, I mean, like because there's I guess there are some guys you would know better that really just see the conquest and the sex and the moving through, having the sex and then being done with it. Well, if you put emotional connection in with that too, which I think happens a lot of times anyways, I've in my life, I've found it very rare where you can have a clean kind of like sexual experience that doesn't carry some baggage afterwards.
Right.
Maybe you can find it with those people, but I know you've had some experience with swinging communities and whatnot, but in my experience, swingers are usually kind of just, lumpy and game, just kind of like.
Mine was different, but I'll fill you in later if you want.
Well, yeah, I'm sure
lumpy and game. That's the swinging handbook, lumpy and game.
But no, I just found that it's very hard for me to just completely sexualize. So there, and it becomes a little more confusing like that.
I'm totally going to ask an inappropriate question,
right.
Which is, I was thinking the eating issues, the steam issues, the anger, all those issues. I thought, and I don't know if you've written about this or talked about it, I thought it must play out in your sex life in some way where you want some submission or dominant stuff.
Well, I'm still sort of figuring some of that stuff out. Like the sex issues, in codependency and sort of love addiction. And, I know compulsive sex addicts and I know, porn addicts. And I know guys that have, I've dabbled in all that stuff, but it never made my life unmanageable,
right.
Which is really the determining factor is
right.
Deciding that. But I understand it.
Right.
So yeah, sure. If you have an addictive personality, it's going to find its way to whatever it is. It's going to have a preference, but if you deny it that, it'll
right.
find the other one.
But I was thinking more separate from the addiction stuff with you. I'll ask it again but there may be a dead end question. I'm so curious though with, there's a lot of that, the shame that you have and then there's the anger. And I
right.
feel like, does that come out in some odd way?
I don't know that I've explored it thoroughly.
Right.
There's parts of me that thinks, well, maybe I should explore that a little more.
Right.
But then there's a fear of that. Well, then do I want to become that guy?
Right.
Do you know what I mean? I'm okay with sex.
Right.
Could it be amazing if I did a little more, if I found somebody who was willing to get choked out or spank around a bit?
Right.
Maybe.
Right.
But then it's a slippery slope, right?
You know what? I think it's not what you're doing, it's why you're doing it. If you are...
No, but that's, you're backloading that.
Go ahead, tell me.
But I mean, when you're in it,
right.
That, if you keep raising the stakes of fulfilling your desire and opening your mind
right.
or your experience, that you're eventually going to hit a wall if you have an addictive personality.
Yeah, for sure. It's like some people can have a drink or try a drug and it's fine. Other people, it's going to be a slippery slope and they're going to go off the edge.
But let's go back to
stuff.
Well, no, we're going to get there.
Okay.
So you're a dweeby guy who's not
thank you.
Who's not great at talking to women,
right?
And now you've got to follow Jenna Jameson around.
Yeah, and again, I thought if it didn't work with Motley Crue, it's definitely going to work with Jenna Jameson, right?
You must have gotten
nothing.
Not from her, but from someone.
I know. I remember being in a lemo, and there are all these kind of other porn stars, and they're all making out. I'm just sitting there watching them, thinking, how do I get in on this? I didn't know how to get in on it. I don't even know today how I would. They were all just kind of making out. I was like, I don't want to get my male energy all over their female. Kind of
so you were
makeout session.
You were immediately codependent to the situation.
yeah. They call it pathological accommodation, where you're so don't want to make anyone else uncomfortable, so you just put yourself in the backseat.
Just disappear.
Yeah, exactly.
You're invisible guy.
Yeah, which is the recipe for being a journalist, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But what was your experience in the porn life? What did you find out about porn?
Yeah, so first of all, it was fascinating because again, this is not a surprise, but they'd get together and talk, and they would all have, so many abuse stories. And I know it's the cliche and people try to pretend like it's not. But for example, Jenna Jameson would do interviews, would do Howard Stern. He'd say, you must have had some kind of abuse in your background. She'd say, no, never. But of course, when we talked, she did. She just didn't want to be that cliche. So that was really a common story. obviously
so publicly, a lot of them would not cop to it, but privately it was there.
Yeah, because they didn't want to be that cliche,
right?
And well,
they didn't want to be. There's something about the image of the sexual object, which is their job, as not necessarily of having some power and not being a victim.
Right.
Publicly.
Right. Yeah, and I suppose it would ruin the fantasy for guys if
some guys
if you thought about that. yeah, that's probably true. And the funny thing too, again, it was kind of like she was the number one porn star at that time, so I'd walk around at the airport and think, man, all these guys have probably masturbated to her.
Sure.
It's fascinating.
I one time went up to a porn star.
Right.
And I didn't know quite how to do it. I don't remember which one it was, but it was before Jenna. It was early on. When I would watch it, I was never a guy who rented porn, so I'd see clips and this and that, or get these DVDs or whatever. But there was one that I forget her fucking name, but I saw her at the airport, with her husband, who was also in it, or her guardian or whatever.
Right.
And
they call them suitcase pimps.
Yeah,
yeah.
I had to say something.
Right.
I didn't, and all I came up with was hey, I really like your work.
Right.
Which is just saying, I
masturbated to you last night.
A lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't say, God, when you take it in your mouth and then put it, you can't, go into detail.
Right,
I guess you could, because they certainly feel that stuff all the time.
Right. Well, it's funny, because one of the most surreal experiences of my life was sitting with her, and she was showing the movie and forwarding past the sex to show me the acting.
No.
Swear to God.
Was she proud of it?
Yeah, she was proud of it.
Oh.
She thought it was really good. It was really a sweet thing.
Was it good?
Yeah. I mean, was it good? Good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when I do the books, I really immerse myself, with Manson. I playing on one of his albums. And with her, I decided they wanted me to write a porn script for her. So I based it on an Ambrose Bierce short story, which if nobody's going to know who watched it, but it won the AVN for best video or best whatever.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I felt like.
Did you get one?
No, it would have been awesome though.
They don't give writers awards.
They don't give it to the writers. No, but I always knew I had a backup career.
Of course you do. A lot of dudes do that. Michael Bloomfield, the amazing guitar player, was strung out on heroin and he used to do Mitchell Brothers soundtracks.
Yeah. Did Jerry Stahl do that stuff too, or?
I'm sure he did.
Yeah.
Did he script pornos? I don't know if he did. I'll ask him.
Yeah.
We could call him later.
Great.
I mean, he's done just about everything.
Exactly.
So it's safe to assume that that was probably part of his story. All right, so here was the big shocker. So when the game comes, I was looking for it. I don't know what happened to it.
Right.
But what I had heard was, I saw the book and I got what it was, and I was like, all right, Neil's doing another investigative thing. But then I started hearing bits and pieces of no, he's out there speaking, he runs workshops. I'm like, whoa, wait, Neil Strauss. And they're like, yeah, he's this guy who's this pussy magnet, this pickup artist. He's running these workshops and he lives in a mansion in Malibu and there's women all around. I'm like, whoa, wait, this is the same Neil Strauss? Did that happen?
Yeah, but see, you see it like I see it. I'll do a news show and they'll be and here's the biggest douchebag in the world who just wrote the manual for men but you see it how I see it, which is I was just a nerdy writer dude who somehow went immersive in this community, wrote a book about it. And then, and again, I really got into it in the book. It wasn't just sort of detached.
Of course you did, because this was what you've been waiting for.
It's what I've been waiting. It's what basically Motley Crue couldn't do it, Janet Jameson couldn't do it, but these kind of nerdy, weirdly dressed guys somehow did it. Yeah.
And you were, I imagine, revered and demonized.
Yeah, it was it's a weird, I still don't, even 10 years ago, I just got a call from Nightline.
Yeah.
And they wanted to do a piece on, they're we want to write about this pickup workshop and then talk to you. I'm like, no, the book's 10 years old. I don't even want to talk about it. It's just, it doesn't go away.
Well, what happened? Walk me through it. Not assuming I read the book or didn't read the book.
Okay.
Walk me through it like a slaw pitch.
Okay. Yes. My name is Neil Strauss and I'm a sex and love addict.
What happened? What was it like? What happened and what's it like now, Neil?
The funny thing, at my first slaw meeting, there was a woman there I thought was kind of attractive.
Sure,
so I didn't want to say I was a sex addict because it might ruin my chances with her.
Of course. Well, you're not alone with that.
Okay. So, so what happened was the book editor I did the Motley Crue book with.
Yeah.
Called me up and he said, hey, I found out about that there's this community of guys online.
Yeah.
They don't have money, looks, or fame. And they're exchanging this knowledge on how to meet, attract, seduce women, and they've got it kind of figured out to a science.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, I want you to take their information and put it into a how-to book for me. And I said, listen, I write for the New York Times. I'm a serious writer.
Yeah.
That's not something I'm interested in, but can you give me the URL?
Yeah.
And so I started reading this stuff, and like there were all these posts with guys with weird names of Mystery and Form Handle and Candor, all these weird names, but they would describe like blow by blow everything they did. I'm like, oh my God, this is it. Because when I was writing for the New York Times, I'd go to these shows, concerts. You go to every concert, and I'd try and meet these women, and I'd have tickets to the next cool concert, and they'd come with me. I'd just always end up in friend zone no matter what I did.
Right.
So I felt like these guys had the secret to finally.
Yeah, you were going to get some.
Right.
And you hadn't had a girlfriend or anything?
I know what would do if I slept with someone, I would try my best to make them my girlfriend so that I could stay with somebody for a few years and not be so lonely.
Right.
Maybe like a few years dry spell between that.
So you go into this and you see these guys got the answers. So you pitch a book where you're going to be among them.
No, I didn't dare tell anyone that I was into it. So,
okay.
So this is
you're highbrow, man. You're New York Times.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so what I did was, I found out that one of this guy named Mystery was doing his first workshop. And a workshop is he meets you out in, quote, the field in a club or a bar, and he shows you how to approach women, then has you do it.
How many guys are involved in this?
You mean how many guys?
Like when you go to a workshop, is it like there's 20 guys sitting at the end of a bar while this one guy goes, watch?
It was like 6 guys.
Okay.
But some of them now are like 20 guys, so the whole thing's insanely weird. So it was $600 or $500, I forget which. I put the money in an envelope. Yeah. Terrified to meet this guy, and terrified that anyone will find out I work for the New York Times.
Right.
And then I remember we were at I guess the Standard was the cool place then, the bar there. And Scott Baio was there with this beautiful woman. Yeah. And he walked in, started like doing magic tricks. And next thing I know, Scott Baio turns to me and goes, is this a magic trick or is he stealing my girlfriend? I'm like, whoa, this is amazing. This guy can walk. Just anyone who could talk to one is my hero. And this guy's walking in, like stealing a celebrity's girlfriend. I'm like, that was it. I was done. It was like,
who was
like
that first hit of crack. Mystery was?
The coke did nothing for me, but watching Mystery do this thing was my coke.
Was he was the one doing magic?
He was doing magic tricks.
So that was his way in. He's like, look at what, okay.
Yeah, but he doesn't like, look what I can do. He'll be talking, be like, oh, that's kind of interesting. It's kind of like this. And he would do it in a way that wasn't braggy or show-offy.
Right.
And,
but he knew magic.
Yeah, and he'd make them beg, sort of like, okay, if you insist, kind of.
Yeah.
Right. So magic was his kind of way in, or his way to sort of like upstage everybody.
And did he get his ass kicked by Scott Baio?
No, he didn't. He got the woman's phone number.
And that was it. Okay. See, guys, see what just happened?
Right.
That's what, and you were like, do I need to learn magic?
I did learn magic. I could probably do table magic in the background. I can read minds, make things levitate, all that.
Really?
Really.
And you were hooked.
Like my reality was blown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what happens?
So then I just tried to start to hang around him as much as I could. And eventually he's like, oh, I need a wing for my workshops. It's so weird, man. It's so surreal, right?
Yeah.
Surreal. So he's like, I need a wing for my workshops. I'm like, oh, I want to do that just to learn what you're doing.
Is he an attractive guy, this guy?
It depends on how you see him. He's tall. He's like 6 feet tall. But it's funny that we go to looks. I don't think it has anything to do with looks.
No, of course
but
not.
Some people find him attractive.
But would you classify him as like a guy who was once like you? Is this like the back of a comic book? Is it like Charles Atlas kick sand in your face?
Oh, he's super nerdy. Like if he's not going out and putting on the whole show, it's sort of like long greasy hair and a ponytail, computer nerd guy.
Right.
But then he'd go out and, really dress up and act tall and confident, but and become that other guy.
Okay.
That was an illusion.
Okay, so he asked you to be his wingman.
Right. So it's so immature. I mean, again, like I got so caught up in it, it's ridiculous to talk about it. So
why, do you feel ashamed of it?
Yes.
Okay.
Like I do.
Okay.
I mean, it's embarrassing, right?
All right.
Like my biggest opportunity in life was not when, John Perales of the New York Times called me and said, will you write for us? It was when Mystery asked me to be his wingman, But obviously it spoke to some deep need inside me to finally really get acceptance.
Well, there's nothing like, getting sex is exciting.
Yeah.
And it means a lot.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for validating that.
Yeah.
So then we started traveling around the world doing workshops, and eventually I started to get good at it. And I found all the other guys who I read about in that community and kind of befriended them all and learned their different tips and tricks. And I think the surreal thing happened was about maybe like a year and a half or 2 years into it, they did a survey in this weird world of pickup artists of the top pickup artists. And I was number 1 and Mystery was number 2. The student has surpassed the master.
Oh, really?
That's why it's such a weird book. It's such a fascinating, bizarre story.
So Grasshopper was going to go out to the West on his own now.
Yeah. And then at some point before this, I'd realized this community is so insane. I got to write about this and it's got to be a book.
And and you pitched the book? Or you wrote it on spec?
No, my publisher was this woman, Judith Regan, who's fantastic.
Oh, yeah. I think I know who she is.
She's great. She's like the Medici of publishers.
Right.
So I would just sit with her. I was telling her about it, and I told her book. She's like, let's do it.
Yeah.
She's the kind of person who goes off her intuition, no pitch. No pitch. She just said, that's cool, let's do it, and that was it.
And she had done your other books?
She'd done my other books, yeah.
So she knows you can sell books.
Right, yeah. She knew I could write, but I'd never done one on my own before.
Now, so this book was sort of half memoir, half investigative journalism. The game was.
Exactly.
But you were in over your head.
But I was in over, there's a little kind of a Donnie Brasco element to it where I didn't know my journalist or my, in the mafia.
I love that movie.
Yeah, it's great.
It's like, I think it's an unsung movie. I think it's really a great movie. So, all right, so you're in, and now you're the number one guy.
Right.
And now how much are you getting laid?
I remember like it was my birthday, and I don't even know what to brag about. It's unseemly.
No, you can. Maybe not frame it as bragging, but like at my lowest.
Right. There we go. That's a humble brag, right? At my lowest. No, I think it was such that you would sort of decide each night, am I going to kind of call someone over or go out with someone I've met, or am I going to go out and kind of meet new people? Or it was weird. It was like a skill set you would work on. It's like, it wasn't enough to have sex. It was like, okay, how can I kind of turn getting a threesome into a science? And how can you would work through all this stuff. And at this point, we're all living together in a house too. We were all living together in a house. I just did an article for Rolling Stone on Courtney Love. She moved into the house.
Yeah.
So we had a house with maybe 6 pickup artists and Courtney Love.
What?
Yeah. It's like, sounds a reality show, like a reality show.
And what was she doing?
I think she was having money issues and hiding from paparazzi, and she lived with us. And so these guys would be in the living room doing a pickup workshop.
Yeah.
And Courtney Love would come like careening through topless. And for some guys, that was their first sight of a female breast.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, so those were the kind of guys that were coming.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
just like sad, desperate men who were lonely and wanted to know what the trick was.
It was a mix of a lot of guys who just came out of divorces.
Oh. Okay.
And felt like just
bitter, angry, broken-hearted guys.
For example.
Yeah. Broke, probably.
Yeah.
Spending their last $600.
Speaking from experience.
Yeah.
And some were guys who were really good-looking, cool guys, but they didn't know it inside. They didn't have that esteem. Other guys, a lot of people who were over as exchange students from somewhere else and just felt out of place in the culture. So a lot of guys like that.
But did you get the sense that any of them were really looking for relationships, or they were just looking to... I mean, I guess that's where it got sort of blurry for you, is that you somehow annihilated your ability or your capacity on top of whatever psychological issues that you come to grips with in this new book, The Truth. You sort of annihilated the ability to have any sense of what that would be.
I think so. I mean, I think when you're in it, no one was like, nobody just want to have sex with women for the rest of their lives. Very few people. People wanted to have a relationship. They wanted to be able to pick the person and choose the person. Nobody was like, we want to be pickup artists and just have one night stand.
Really?
That was a rare breed of person. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Even when I was doing it, I was like, I just want when I really meet someone, I'm really attracted to them, to be able to not blow it. So it was never like I'm not going to have a relationship.
But wait, there's a big leap between that, saying when I meet the one that I want, that I'm not going to blow it, and like, what's the craft of threesomes?
Right. Yes, exactly. It was like, I want to do that, but a little bit later because I'm having fun right now. Right. But the big divide was like a divide existed in your mind between men and women. So the real problems with it were objectification, obviously, and manipulation. Mm-hmm. Right. So in other words, if I saw a woman, their word was sarging. So sarging is their word. They had their own language.
Right.
So if I saw a woman, like I would have to sarge. I could be in a business meeting and be that. I would perform it all for her.
What does it mean?
Sarging was like going out to like pick up or seduce. Mm-hmm. So it became
the approach, the first step.
No, I think sarging was just the whole going out to the whole thing was sarging.
Oh, okay.
The seduction process.
You're going out to sarge.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay, so you had at some point realized in the midst of all this, living in a house full of guys figuring out how to get women.
Right.
That you might not be respecting women. How long did that take?
Yeah. It took me longer. It's the funny thing about writing a book is you read it and you realize pretty early on. But for sure, it all combusted, even within the book, like, all these fake alpha males, because you're trying to be an alpha male, and it's nothing worse than anyone who sees the world as alpha and beta male. So all these fake alpha males living in a house started fighting with each other. One guy slept with some other guy's ex, and that guy tried to kill him. A mystery. The book begins with mystery trying to commit suicide over a woman. So the whole thing became just the immaturity of it.
Sounds like you guys underestimated the power of women.
Or I think we underestimated
your own vulnerability.
Yeah, your own vulnerability, and that somehow you're going to somehow become a better person through whatever.
Or was it really a better person, or just a winning person in the eyes of what masculinity has been defined as?
Oh, that's great. That's great. Thank you. I love it's a nuanced world, and that's exactly what it is, and that's exactly the problem with it.
Yeah. Well, so what did your bottom look like?
I think the bottom for me was just living in that house, all the guys fighting each other, one guy trying to commit suicide. I met somebody actually who was in Courtney Love's band who I really had this huge crush on.
Yeah.
And I had to sort of get real to have a real relationship with her. And she was like, she said the wisest words, which like you were, even though Marc Maron doesn't think so, she was like, you're cool all along. You didn't need these guys to show you anything.
No, I have no issue with you. I'm just judging in the context of, of how you saw yourself in a way.
So, it's so true.
And the weird thing is, like, yeah, I bust your balls a little bit, but you and I are more alike than we are different.
Right.
And because I sort of processed through a lot of this stuff in terms of, I did a bit on it in my last special about what kind of man am I really, because, you judge yourself against what you think are alpha guys, and, you're insecure in certain ways. And even if you do find somebody that loves you for who you are, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to, make you feel better about yourself.
Right.
It could be the worst thing in the world, because then you're sort of like, I don't like me. How can you like me? And then you fucking implode that thing.
And people are attached to their own low opinion of themselves. If something rocks that, they for some reason they want to hold on to.
Well, for some reason it's who you are. For whatever reason, it's the most consistent disposition.
Yeah.
And it happened a long time ago because of some emotional deprivation that was done on behalf of your parents.
And that's exactly what, with the retrospect now that I realize what the game was just, the game was me, overbearing, dominant, neurotic mom, having a total fear of women and feeling like I needed to have some sort of power or control over the situation. Mm-hmm. So it had nothing even to do with sex. It was just about self-esteem and fear.
But sex is good. Like, the truth of the matter is, no matter what your psychological issues are, like, when you do get to have sex, there's still very little difference between that immediate experience when it's happening from however old you are now to when you were 13. I mean, right. The stakes might be higher. It might be weirder than you might have thought. It might not be the best situation. But that moment where you're like, I'm having sex, that's pretty constant.
Right. I mean, like, that's what shooting up heroin.
Yeah.
Like, right? So in the moment, that's fine. In the very moment when the needle enters your arm and you feel the rush go to your heart, that feels good.
That's right. But, I guess that's true. And I sort of stepped out of the addiction model.
Right.
Is that, it can, it does eventually stop working.
Yeah. And go ahead.
And you hate yourself.
Right. And if you're just having sex that's pleasurable and it's nice and it feels good and you enjoy people, that's great. But if you're doing it to fill some hole, that's the addiction. It's if you're doing it to fill some hole inside, or just because you like it.
Right. Yeah. I don't, it's weird. I don't know ultimately how clear I am on all this stuff, because, like, I still deal with this stuff all the time. I'm in a relationship now, and right. I've not been able to sustain a relationship. I don't have children. I've definitely had, sexual issues and emotional issues, for my entire life. It's the one part of my life which is, still tricky and difficult, even with self-awareness and some practical work. But it really does come down to cognitive behavior, cognitive choices after a certain point.
Do you want to talk about what I learned? Because that's what I'm the most excited about.
Great. I'm here to talk right about. There. Great. But what I want to like make sure everyone understands is that the game sold millions of books.
Right.
It propelled you into reluctantly into a career that you probably didn't see that you were going to have. It characterized you culturally in a very specific way that some people might find hucksterish, other people might find obnoxious, but there was enough men out there that thought you were a portal to some wizardry necessary to them, that it validated you. And so in retrospect, even though we have the truth here, the new book, you did make a deal with the devil.
Well, I'll tell you the way I kind of see it, but go ahead.
No, but I mean, like, and now, you're negotiating your way out through personal enlightenment.
That's not the way I see it, but I see that narrative.
Okay.
And maybe it is right. I'll think it through. So here's the way. I mean, the way I kind of see it was, but it was weird. So when the game came out, like, I just thought it's just it's a book I wrote about. It's like any other book. Mm-hmm. And then I remember my phone started ringing that day with guys calling, like, hey, there's this one girl I met. Can you help me? Literally the day it came out.
Guys you know?
Guys I didn't know. They looked up my number. I was listed.
Oh, okay.
And that's the moment I got my number unlisted.
Yeah.
And again, I did the book tour. I was ready to do the next book. And then, like,
What was the next book?
The next book was, trying to remember.
So you were out?
Oh, I was going to do a graphic novel with this Bernard Chang, the illustrator. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I was out. And then these guys came up to me and they said, hey, you should, and I didn't really even have a website, no website address. And these guys came up to me and they said, you should, and they were marketers and they're like, you should, do this teaching thing.
Make the manual.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I was really reluctant and made him jump through a bunch of hoops and said it's not what I did. And eventually I let them kind of take over and did it.
Oh, right. That's so it wasn't your fault at all.
It wasn't my fault. No, but I remember the day, like, it sold out in half an hour.
The manual. The game. What was it called? The game.
No, Rules of the Game.
Rules of the Game.
Rules of the Game was like it's weird. My publisher said, let's do this how-to thing.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm a storyteller. It's weird. I've just totally resisted. I've almost compartmentalized that side of my life.
Yeah. You have compartmentalized the actual Faustian deal.
Yes. But so I felt like I said, I'll do this how-to book. Half of it can be stories. The other half will be how-to. But what I think is nice. Go ahead. Tell me. Show me my own hypocrisy. Throw it in my face.
It's not hypocrisy.
Yeah, go ahead.
It was how you could live with yourself.
Right.
It's not hypocrisy.
Explain it.
I can't explain it, but
right.
what I'm hearing is, like, it's not really what I do, but if we can integrate a little bit of what I do into your agenda as well and make a little cash, let's do that. But I don't want to sell out completely. Let me tell some stories, because I'm a writer.
It's like the best interview ever. Oh man, it's really I've been outside the cash because I don't think like that. I do a book for. I don't know. It's probably all right. I don't fucking know. Well, but you're so right. It totally, you trick yourself into doing these things. Of course. Yeah.
I mean, that's how selling out works for people with integrity. But you have to. But whether or not you saw the profit end of it anyways, right. Like when you are, and I've said this before, I mean, you don't really make big money until you make someone else big money. And you were in that position. Like your publisher, they all knew. The marketers and the publisher, they knew it was like almost like a guarantee.
No, you're so right. I mean, it really is a forking path. I think about it all the time. You're so right. There's a book called Life is Elsewhere by Milan Kundera.
Yeah.
And this guy has a choice between becoming a total hack and being an artist.
Right.
And he chooses the hack road because of his mother issues and the pressures of the time.
Right.
And I always think of that's the forking path. And I've tried to keep one foot on both sides of the forking path, but now it's getting too wide that I can't straddle them anymore.
And that's where it was when you did the Rules of the Game. Right. And that's when, after that.
Yeah, it's kind of where it is now, in a way.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I just feel like I tried to okay, I'll do this stuff, but I'm still a serious writer and journalist. I'm still writing for Rolling Stone. It doesn't count that I do this
stuff. So this new book, The Truth is this is your redemption.
I don't think of it that way. I hate to think of it that way because I don't think it. But tell me how you see it. Maybe you're right. Maybe you have a better perspective.
No, I don't have any perspective. Yeah. But you had a cathartic, existential crisis of self around where you were in the world, and also you hit a personal wall and bottom where you realized that you were empty and your integrity had been drained from this fucking thing that, the sex addiction and the publishing industry and your requirements, and what was required of you. And this is your sort of like, I have to redeem myself for myself.
Yes, I gotta tell you, I really mean it. This is the best narrative because I'm outside myself. You see it better, but there's a press narrative that's totally not true. This is I really want to listen back to this because you understand this book better than I am.
No, because when you are consumed, and not necessarily greed, but when you're consumed in something that is as powerful as sex addiction and it's your bread and butter.
Yeah. Yes, because when I was in rehab, they said everyone was adding up what their sex addiction has cost them.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, it cost me my home.
And you're like, it got me my home.
Yeah, that was exactly it. They're like, I spent $250,000 on prostitutes. I'm like, I made $250,000 off this book. You know, like, you know, I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, right. You were not the sympathetic case at the sex addiction meeting.
Right.
Like, I'll tell you, man, if it weren't for my sex addiction, I would not have my house or my car
right.
or the opportunities that I have in
right.
life. I'm in such a bad place, you guys.
Right, exactly.
All right, so the rules of the game come out, and now you're overwhelmed, I would imagine, with that type of notoriety, and I imagine it's quite conflicting and also painful, I would assume.
Yeah, it's weird. I sort of became, I would read about myself in the media and be like, I sort of became I just feel like the game and.
What was your mother saying?
My mother, my mother was cool with everything until I went to sex addiction rehab to get better. Then she had a problem with stuff.
Oh, really? Because you know, what, you lost control? I don't understand.
No, okay, let's.
Oh, because then you were identified as a sex addict? Or?
I think she really said, like, so people have affairs, big deal. Like, no, like, you know, nothing's wrong with you.
Did she read the book?
This book?
No, the last one.
I think she has no problem with me having casual sex. The whole problem was she didn't want me having relationships.
Huh.
So if you go back to the problem.
She didn't know that.
She didn't know that.
Right.
But she wanted her relationship with me to be the primary one in my life.
This is what you learned through your recovery.
Right.
Okay, so what happens?
I hate that word. Recovery sounds like, I hate.
This is what happened.
No, recovery's fine, but it's got so many. Recovery's a fine word.
Well, no. Let's unload it from what it means in the context of psychological treatment.
I'll tell you the way I see it is when I found out, like, what's all the programming that I'm operating on, and how can I change that program?
Well, yeah. What essentially was it in your childhood that created the emotional deprivation that made you seek, self-completion through these various ways that were dangerous?
Exactly. Great way to say it.
Good. So what did happen? You met the girl from Hole, or from her new band.
And then we, had a relationship, but of course, in my mind, she was turning into my mom, so I had to break up with her. But in reality, I was probably just making her, and you know what I mean? She might do one thing that reminds me of
Have you read
mom.
The Fantasy Bond?
Yes.
Okay.
Great. Firestone?
Yeah.
Yes. Great book.
So when you say, turning into her, whether you projected it or not, because you end up in that same relationship every time, one way or the other.
Exactly.
Because, whatever you have that interfaces with what they have is exactly what you grew up with or what drives you into the pathological self-parenting that creates the self-loathing.
There's a line in the book that says, when it's love at first sight, run in the other direction. All that's happened is your wounds have met their wounds.
Yeah, trauma bonding.
Yeah, trauma bonding.
What were those attributes? What in terms of identifying the emotional manipulation of your mother? What was it?
Right. I'll never forget. Like, there's that moment where your life changed, and maybe the equivalent of Mystery picking up Scott Bale's girlfriend.
Yeah.
Which again is the most pathetic epiphany in the world. Is I was sort of right. That was the moment my life changed, when Mystery picked up Scott Bale's girlfriend.
Oh boy, you're gonna tell your grandkids that.
Exactly. So I was being really, by the way, I was really cynical about the whole rehab sex addiction thing. When I checked in, they said anyone who masturbates is a sex addict. Anyone who watches porn is a sex addict. There are some groups, not this one, that say anyone who has premarital sex is a sex addict. So basically everyone listening would be a sex addict by someone's definition.
Well, culturally, it's actually this very weird and unspoken malignancy that the access to pornography is completely annihilating millions of people's ability to maintain intimacy. I believe that.
Right.
You?
I think that it's sort of the swing states of compulsion, that, like, if you already have that compulsion, it's really easy to dive into it.
Right.
So I
that's
think
what I mean. Just access.
Yeah.
It was better when you had to go to the gross store.
Right. But you would still masturbate just as much to that one magazine
that's
as
fine.
you would to all
but still,
right.
That seems better.
And the variety, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
But versus channel flipping between 50 women for one orgasm. It's insane.
It's fucking nuts, dude.
Yeah, there's a lot of writing. I mean, it really must rewire your brain.
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, I track my entire perception of sex to seeing porn too young, and it fucking hobbled me, man.
What did you see that did that?
When I was like 14, we found a Betamax of Deep Throat and the opening of Misty Beethoven.
Right.
And then when I was 15, we actually had fake IDs and went to porn theaters. But the assumption at that age, especially for a socially awkward, sexually awkward kid that I was that that's the way it's done.
Right.
And anything below that, or that doesn't happen that way, is not good sex. So, I was fucked from the get-go.
Yeah, because they call it, that's your attraction template. Like it sets a template in your mind for what sex is supposed to be. Like your first experience molds you.
Right.
It creates those neural connections that don't exist.
Right. So you did a lot of research.
Yeah. It's fascinating. And I think
it's all in the truth. You went scientific, you went spiritual, you went cognitive, you went straight up psychological.
Yeah, and entered all these alternative communities of alternative relationships. But so the moment that my life kind of changed was I was sitting there, really being cynical about this with what I thought was this kind of castrating therapist who didn't want men to have any sex at all.
You projected that.
Yes. And she started, you do something called a timeline, which is all the high points, all the big moments of your life.
Yeah.
And she looked at it and she saw this pattern and she said, "You know why you can't be in a relationship?" I'm like, "No." And she goes, "Because your mom wants to be in a relationship with you." And I just felt this cold wind blew, and it seemed so preposterous. Yet something in me just sort of like recognized this. And this is the moment. Yeah. And then she goes, "Then there's a name for this, and it's called emotional incest." And I was like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah. Yeah. Keep talking. You're helping me.
So, and the idea of emotional incest is that when your parents, when you exist to serve your parents' needs versus your parents serving your needs.
I had the same childhood.
I knew that. I mean, I knew that because I had an emotionally absent dad, like yours, right? And then a mom who's overplayed by her problems to take care of mine.
Yeah.
So it's that one clue of it is when you grow up feeling sorry for a parent.
Right.
Did you?
What I felt was a loyalty.
Yes.
That was unnatural.
Yeah.
A loyalty to their emotional states.
Exactly. So their emotional needs come before yours.
Sure.
And what happens?
They use you.
Yeah, and you're used.
Yeah.
And you just don't realize it because it seems normal. In fact, the sort of the thing about it is where something's sort of physical abuse or yelling at someone or criticizing, well, we know that makes us feel bad. You can identify
it. It's like the difference. It's like, like alcoholics. When you don't drink, you're not, that's all, most of the problem.
Right.
But when it's vague, what was your abuse? Sexual? No. Did they hit you? No.
Right.
It's actually more insidious.
And it's empowering. Because when you're daddy's little girl or mommy's little man, or you're kind of emotionally smarter than them, you feel empowered. So it feels good. So you don't even recognize it as abuse.
But you end up with no sense of self.
No sense of self.
Yes.
And in fact, myself, Robert Greene, who wrote The Art of Seduction, Tucker Max, who's kind of the, frat boy writer guy, we all had kind of, depressed or narcissistic moms and didn't have that sense of self.
Yeah, I mean, I've been very aware of the project of completing myself.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I read Firestone within the last year that, that because of something my therapist passively mentioned about the fantasy bond, that I was not able to that one piece that I got from Firestone that blew my mind is that, there's no one, if you're uncomfortable because of your parents' emotional abuse, you don't know as a kid, you assume your parents are good, so there's no one to blame but yourself.
Right.
And that happens at a very young age. So your attempt to self-parent is really is self-loathing.
Yeah, and there's another great book called Silently Seduced. I don't know if you've read it. I forget the name of the author, but Silently Seduced is the book. He talks about how what happens in relationships, and tell me if this is true for you, is you'll start taking care of their needs. You get your worth and value by taking care of their needs, but it's never enough. And you start to build up resentment, and that resentment starts to poison the relationship. So you stay with them out of a sense of duty while this resentment piles up, and eventually it all goes wrong. Right.
Well, no, that's happened. But that codependent piece of me, like I didn't identify completely until pretty recently, until I was engaged to somebody and it blew up, and that was that relationship. But before that, I was sort of the other side. I was this sort of emotionally volatile kind of, problematic person, constantly in a state of contrition.
Right.
And then I sort of learned to shut my mouth, and then I became, dramatically, I tried to nurture a very insane relationship, almost blindly thinking that the other person would change. And that was a big wake up call.
Yeah, because maybe there's this idea, if I can change, I can heal my childhood wounds. If I change her, it's like I fixed my mom and she's okay.
Yeah, well, you're not thinking that way.
Right. You're subconsciously, unconsciously.
I guess that's right, yeah.
But so like the most freeing thing was for me to realize, like, what's the best? Yeah, that I was kind of running these unconscious patterns over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. And if I could, but by the way, recognizing them was not enough. Mm-hmm. Like, once I recognized them, like, I still blew it for like years, until I finally said, okay, I got to take like the stuff that's wrong with me and think of it like a cancer, and just like attack it with every, therapy possible. And also, like, I don't know if you do talk therapy. Is that mostly what you do? I find that talk therapy, like, the information didn't come in rationally through your mind. It came in emotionally through your feelings. And it's funny. It's hard to talk about that stuff, isn't it? Is it hard to talk about that? Because I feel so passionate about it, but I find that it's hard to explain, that deeper. I think
I'm not having a hard time understanding you.
Yeah.
And
I'm just thinking for someone listening, they're like, okay, get over this therapy shit and tell us about the other stuff.
You don't assume. You still have that weird accommodating thing. You might want to work on that a little more.
Great, man. Right on.
But no, because like a lot of this work I've been reluctant to do. Right. And it's still fairly intellectual for me right now.
Because what? Yeah, the intellectual, yeah, and look,
I guess because like I've learned to live with pain, and I see it as sort of ground zero for me. And I, like, as a comic and as somebody who is emotionally insulated a bit, except when I'm talking to strangers or people that I know are going to leave in 20 minutes, like you, that my capacity to stay open and to not live in those childhood fears that are not real anymore is muted. And I think that one of the reasons I haven't done, the type of, almost life-saving work that you felt you had to do was because of a different type of fear that, like, this is, that there is a deeply wired comfort in discomfort for me.
Yeah, I understand. I understand that. I understand that fear. And I think I had that too, that I would somehow lose something instead of gaining something. But I think you got to do it because something has to change or something has to crack, and you got to take yourself outside your comfort zone. And the other thing is, if you look at the way you're raised, and I don't, Dad was emotionally distant, right? Your dad.
And volatile.
And volatile. So you're kind of walking on eggshells. There's no connection. Mom was kind of consumed with her own stuff, and her love was kind of conditional in a way.
And there was a lot of, it was conditional, but it was more based on their own fears. There was a lot of worry on behalf of both of them that, what they saw as love was a sort of panic.
Yeah.
You were almost like an appendage.
Right.
And not a separate person. You were like this, in moments of panic, you were just part of them, that they were like, I've got to deal with that. My mother had eating disorders, so her panic was mostly around my being fat.
So, and so what it wires you is to have no idea what intimacy is.
None. And the inability to give or receive love. Too.
And so like, this makes sense. I can connect. This is the game to you, which is I can connect with people, but in this position of power. We're in my garage. Yeah. I'm controlling the conversation. You're going to leave later. So this almost is probably why you're so good at it, because this is your
kinda. Yeah, there's that, but it is my intimacy, right?
Yeah.
But like, in other relationships, like, there's also the fact that, people start to see you a certain way, which you experienced, and they'll want to interface with that, what they see, and you may be putting it out, but in your mind and in your heart, you're like, that ain't really me, but you're not going to do anything about it. Right. You're going to let yourself just be taken.
Right.
And that's some other horrible thing.
And the other thing I'd imagine is that you can't, if you can't be calm, if something's at peace, there always has to be some emergency, some danger, something about to go wrong.
Yeah, there's definitely a drama element.
And it's exhausting.
Oh, like, yeah. It's a lot less with me now, and I'm fairly cognizant of trying to sort of cognitively manage it, to not make choices that will cause it. So I'm on top of that a bit.
Right.
Yeah.
I think so. And what's your resistance, do you think, to doing the things that will actually shift something?
It becomes sort of time and just sort of investigating how I need to do it. Like, I don't, like, I know that I've made progress, and I know that, and I've recently really realized that there is another leap I have to make, that could free me and open my heart. I just have not pursued it as much, but I know it.
Right.
I'm not just blithely in denial.
I'll speak for myself, that I was so scared of marriage. I was scared of being with someone for the rest of my life. I was scared of connection. If someone got too close or maybe cling with me, I would just sort of like my skin would crawl.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like, oh man, the sex is better because it's so connected. Like I'm happier than I've ever been. And, I can like the world's a little bit brighter because I can see see the sunshine. And I just like, it's incredible how much energy I invested in keeping myself from being happy. Like, it's so much work to keep myself from being happy. It was insane.
But when you're in it, you just think it's who you are.
Exactly. And because it's so hard to see yourself, everyone else can see it.
So the journey through the truth is this psychological journey in all its manifestations.
Pretty much.
And you moved through a lot of different, alternative lifestyle communities to see if there were solutions there.
Yeah. It's funny because, like I sat down to write the book and it was going to be this kind of semi-angry book about how monogamy doesn't work, relationships don't work, it doesn't make sense, doesn't scientifically make sense, biologically, and monogamy is something the Catholic Church instituted in the 9th century.
Right.
Why are we still doing this?
So you were still operating from your disease point of view, trying to justify your behavior.
Exactly. And I thought, I'm going to go invent a new kind of relationship that's true and authentic to me and show the world how it's better and they're wrong.
Yeah.
Right. So I tried the polyamory scene, the swinging scene, tried having an open relationship, all those different things.
Well, let's talk about those quickly.
Sure.
The polyamory scene, what went wrong?
So I went to this thing called the World Polyamory Conference, and I thought they'd talk about how you deal with multiple relationships. And it was this very weird new age thing where they had something called a puja, P-U-J-A. And they were just sort of it was just the weirdest thing. I don't even know it was so confusing, but they were kind of having this kind of group orgy, but it was all kind of new agey, and they were talking about priestesses. They didn't talk about your penis was your wand, the sacred cathedral was the woman. Like,
what the fuck was this?
It was just some weird, I don't know
that would be
that wasn't the answer. So
representational of the polyamorous
community.
And
I got kicked out of the orgy for eating popcorn. I was eating popcorn. They said, you can't eat food in a temple. You need to leave.
Really?
And I got kicked out of the orgy for eating popcorn. And so that was
a blessing in disguise.
It was a blessing in disguise. So then I decided, like you said, I said, well, it's a part of the community, but it's not. There must be something else. And so I moved in with 3 girlfriends. And I said, I'm going to live in a free love nirvana, right?
Yeah.
They're all non-monogamous. We're going to have this great life. And it totally blew up obviously anyone listening knows it blew up in my face. Little things that they didn't teach you at the conference, like who gets the front seat of the car. You literally have 3 people standing at the door and have to choose one. And I ended up literally sleeping on the couch almost every night. Alone.
Now, when you were in the grips of your sex addiction, we talked about dominant, submissive, and that stuff.
Right.
Where did you end up in that world?
I really like that. I think I looked at the kink community and watched some of that stuff. But I'm really I like to be equals. I don't like to be dominant or submissive. It wasn't my thing.
And so you tried the living with 3 girlfriends. Now, what was was there more of an equality sense? Did you start to regain your respect for women? Or develop it?
Yeah, I don't think I ever had a disrespect.
Yeah.
Or consciously, but I think I always, that maybe sex was so important to me that I would do or say what I needed to get it.
Right.
I think it was less true now, but I think what I'd learned in this, it was a fear of love. If someone in the group became too attached, it was the pathological accommodation. I try to make everybody happy. And in trying to make everybody happy, I made nobody happy. So this person might get jealous, this person might get upset. So I just felt like I was walking on, just eggshells around 3 people's feelings.
And what was the swinging situation? If it wasn't lumpy and game, what was it?
The swing situation, I went to this amazing part. Like, people were they were gorgeous, just insane.
Oh, really?
It was in Vegas. The party was called Bliss.
Yeah.
And probably the most all the most gorgeous people in Vegas were at this party. And I really talked to the guys about it. And somebody gave me some GHB and I passed out, in the middle of the first orgy. Everything was a disaster, whatever I did. But what was interesting is I talked to the guys about why they would do it. And so one guy, he's somehow a child actor, ends up in every book. This was like Corey Feldman, who was running the orgy or something. You're already in the wrong place.
Yeah.
So he said, the jealousy, he's like, I get high off the jealousy. If I feel jealousy that someone's having sex with my wife, or girlfriend, I'll just sort of work through it and turn it into pleasure. So he got high on the jealousy.
Yeah, that's a form of,
emotional masochism.
Well, it's a form of submissive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another guy said, I want male approval. So I share my wife or girlfriend with these guys to get male approval. So I really kind of got into
That's another submissive.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. But it felt like very almost more objectifying than the game world, because everyone, their wives were almost like this piece of property to be,
but what
traded.
was it like at home? Like, what was it like over breakfast and after work?
That was kind of like the nice stuff, is like the couples would like hang out afterward, and they kind of were like, a couple would be dating another couple. They'd hang out. It was kind of intimate and cool. What I liked about it in this case, in this scene, was that the couples were kind of intimate friends.
But it's weird. It seems like there's no way to avoid, in those type of situations, ultimately experiencing what you experience, which was, it takes a lot of energy to sort of maintain that lifestyle. It doesn't sound like it could ever be just matter of fact and like, this is what we do.
I think if you do anything enough, right, there's this concept, I think they call the Burnin Period, which is, if you're going to do one of these alternative lifestyles, right, it takes a few years to get used to it. But after a while, I guess anything can be, this is what we do.
So
right?
You move through all this stuff, and I saw in the book that, what did you learn about alpha and beta and that kind of stuff?
Those are nonsense concepts.
They are.
I think they are.
But what did you find medically?
I would lessen this. Here's what I think. I always have these discussions. Is monogamy natural? Is all this? I think, honestly, if you're basing your behavior on a scientific theory, then you're an idiot. Right? Because I think you'll use science to justify stuff. Like, well, it's evolutionary okay to spread my seed, so thus I'm going to go have sex. It's fucking, like, I think evolutionary is such a slippery argument. You can use it to justify anything. It's so open-ended. By the way, one interesting thing is I talked to a geneticist. Because I thought, you know what? Maybe I'm just not born to be monogamous. And this guy found the gene, the gene responsible for monogamy.
Right.
And I guess it's a gene with a coding for a long vasopressin receptor, if you want to drop some science.
Sure, go ahead.
That is why that creates kind of monogamy. And so I thought maybe I just have the wrong size vasopressin receptor or whatever.
No test for that, though, is there?
There's no test, but I went to him, so I said, listen, am I just doomed, or can I get a transplant or something?
Yeah.
And he said, I found that there's no behavior that's purely genetic. Like the environment switches things on.
Of course, that's how adaptation works.
Exactly. Right. So he kind of says, we're making a choice. You and I are in control. You're choosing to stay as you are, right? Choosing to feel like
right. Yeah. I mean, if everyone was confined to their genetic behavior, everything would be dead.
Right. And the whole thing is nonsense.
No evolution.
Yeah.
You have to make slight adjustments in order for the species to survive.
Right. But we have the amazing power to rationalize any kind of behavior.
Humans, right. Now, I know you talk about, your relationship with your mother, and I know at the beginning of the book, you begin a thread through the book about what you found out about your father. Do you want to talk about that, or do you want people to read the book?
I mean, I'll talk about anything. I'm open to it. Oh man, I'll see if I can say, I guess like my father had basically my mom and dad had a horrible relationship. I mean,
but you knew that?
I didn't know. I knew that I was a child. I always knew they had a horrible relationship.
But what, yelling or screaming or what?
No, because, my mom would come into my room and complain about my father.
Right.
And tell me, and again, I'm 11, 12, 13. Tell me, no matter what you do, when you, never grow up to make anyone as miserable as your father makes me.
Oh my God.
Why are you going to say that to a kid?
Sad, dude.
It's so sad what parents do and not realizing it.
Yeah.
In fact, I found a punishment that my parents gave me when I was a kid. I had to write, I am a dumb jerk over 500 times. Like, you're programming someone to think they're a dumb, I mean, all the self-esteem, nothing's a surprise.
Yeah. And what was the core of their problem?
Oh, the core of their problem, man, it's so fucked up. It's weird to, so my dad, I mean, there's so many problems, but the main thing, my dad had a fetish for handicapped and amputee, people with physical deformities, that he kept secret. And my mom has a limp and a physical deformity. And so she found out later, she never knew this. In fact, to this day, they've never discussed it. Or
are they married?
They're married. They're still married.
Wow.
That's why I love the movie Bitter Moon that I mentioned earlier, because it's two people staying together, keeping each other miserable. And so basically she was his, she was his secret fetish object. Like he, took videos of their honeymoon and cut it together just with photos of her limping. And then he has some kind of group of friends or guys who he trades this stuff with.
Oh my God.
It's the weirdest shit. So it's that, the skeletons in the closet and I really thought till I found this stuff, I thought I had a normal family and a normal childhood. I wrote about the weird people, the mysteries in the game and the Motley Crues. And it was kind of this moment when I realized, oh, I'm just as fucked up as all those guys.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize we're all just as fucked up as those guys. We just don't see it because we're so used to living with ourselves.
Yeah. And what did you experience emotionally upon processing this, or?
I think what it did for me was it caught me up with my mom. Like I kind of just got involved in her secrecy, and we would investigate my dad together, and we'd, you know, she'd call and we'd trade this information about it.
When you were a kid?
Or
recently?
Kind of I think when I was a kid, she just complained about my dad and say, but when I found this maybe about 17 or 18. So since then till like, I stopped it maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah. That was it. Like our relationship was investigating my dad and trying to figure this stuff out. And she'd say, well, I found these new photos of him doing this. And we had this, and
he's like, just in the room. He's in the other room.
He'd be in the other room, like oblivious. Yeah.
And what's your relationship with them?
And she was always paranoid. He had cameras around the house filming her.
Oh my God.
It's so sad, man. It's so sad. Like, I mean, that's why you
and it's also very defined though. You know, it's not like, cause then you step from just this emotional abuse and to something that's tangible and bizarre, right. And then you bond with your mother over the bizarreness of the situation. But where do they stand now, and where do you stand with them?
Yeah, so this most fascinating thing happened, and I'd be curious to ask you this about your mom as well. So as I was doing this book, I set boundaries with my mom. I said, hey, I'm not going to keep secrets anymore. Like, it really made me a cheating, I'm not going to keep secrets anymore. I'm not going to talk to you about what's wrong with Dad. It's hurting my relationship. So no more of that. So she kind of got upset and then stopped talking to me for a while. And then she texted me and she said, I've got this new secret email address. Don't tell anyone. And I wrote a book about your dad. Will you kind of help me with it?
Oh my God.
And I said, and I got excited. She was talking to me again. So I'm like, oh, sure. Yes. Great. Like a dutiful son.
Yeah.
And then about a day later, she said, when can we talk? And I realized, what the fuck am I doing? You get caught up in it, man.
Oh yeah. You've been deprived of it. And you're like, I want to read the book.
Yeah. And so I texted her back, hey, I'm happy to talk about anything, but I just can't keep secrets and have these conversations. And you know what she said back?
What?
Nothing. Last time I heard from her.
Oh shit.
I mean, I shouldn't even say this on her. This was, maybe like 6 months ago. And literally, I shouldn't even fucking say this, but fuck it. Like, I just had an 8-month-old. And
you're married?
I'm married. Yeah. I have an 8-month-old. They have not come out to visit. They're only grandchild. Like, their shit is stronger than wanting to see your only grandchild. It's insane to me.
It's insane, dude. I'm sorry.
Yeah. But the upside is all this let me know that, okay, that the stories that I'm hearing in therapy, these are true. This behavior is still happening. And so that divorcing my parents was what enabled me to actually become an adult and have an adult relationship. So the upside is seeing the reality, seeing what it really is, that you're there to serve their needs, they're not there for your needs, can allow you to sort of divorce yourself from your parents and start to have your own life.
And are you happy?
Yeah, but like I'll just be changing in the bathroom with Ingrid and I'll think, fuck, why was I resisting this shit for so long? So much happier than it could have been. There's some sadness and some grieving over the loss of
the relationship with your parents.
Yeah.
The horrible relationship.
Right. So what are you grieving anyway? Like if your friend treated you like that, you'd be like, good riddance, right?
But they made you.
Right. Yeah.
They made you mentally and they made you emotionally and they made you physically. So you're trapped.
Yeah. But you don't have to be trapped.
No, that gets you.
Yeah.
Get you.
Yeah. I'm keeping this diary for my son.
Yeah.
Of everything that I feel Ingrid and I are doing right or wrong, all our decisions about parenting. So when he grows up, he can know maybe what his emotional DNA is and make of it what he will.
It's interesting, man. I mean, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful story. So you do the work that you need to do day to day to nurture and be emotionally upfront and honest with your monogamous relationship.
Yes, that's for sure. And also being aware of when you're getting stuck in your story. Like, simple thing. She texted me. I was coming home. I was 15 minutes late. I was working out 15 minutes late. And there's a film crew waiting at the house to film me for something. And she said, they've been waiting here for 15 minutes. That's so rude.
Yeah.
And I texted her back saying, I'm coming. And she responded just, so rude. So I thought, fuck her. She's like my mom, nagging. She hates me like she hates my dad. Leave me the fuck alone. Can't I live my own life? And then I'm like, wait, what's going on here? Like, how many times has she said nice things to you over the week? And how many times has she said negative things? Like, if so, you expect someone to love you to always be positive about you, you're insane, right?
Yeah.
They don't have to like everything about you. So I thought that, and then I thought, let me ask myself a question. If you have an appointment with the film crew and you go to work out, you leave all those people waiting at your house for 15 minutes while you go to the gym, is that rude?
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, of course it's rude. So I responded to her like, yes, it is rude. And she said, she responded to say, sorry, I was just stressed out. And we got to have a relationship instead of me starting to think she's naggy, resentful. I need my freedom. I just thought.
Making a monster. with misperception.
Exactly. Getting out of your own story.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, this is great, man. And it sounds like a real fucking emotional, cathartic and courageous journey you took with this thing.
It was the best journey of my life. And now I can actually stop the cycle and be a better parent than the ones you and I may have had. Congratulations. Thank you, man. And I'm excited for you, Neil. It was great talking to you. Cool. We covered a lot. It's great. So wait, what do you have? So before we came over, I looked at the interview I did with you maybe 20 years ago. Really? You were 33. Really? Yeah. So what are you? I'm 52. I just turned 52. So yeah, almost 20 years ago. And I looked over because I wanted to think, well, were there clues here that you'd be doing what you're doing now? Really? Yeah. And you have that? Yeah, I have that. I kind of wrote down some of those quotes. When I was at Luna, or when did you were at Luna, and we were talking about the Luna scene. And by the way, and I wrote some of the stuff you said made, you were really cerebral, maybe stoned. Yeah. Because some of the stuff made no sense, but I wrote down some quotes. Oh, I want to hear them. And they make sense to. Oh, come on, this is crazy. Yeah. So, let's see. All right. So the first thing, and this is kind of you said, if narcissism were a political movement, we would be unstoppable, which I thought was funny. Then that was a bit. That was a bit. Yeah. Then you lambasted the idea of Dennis. I don't know. I wrote this, lambast the idea of Dennis Miller and references implying wisdom. I have no idea what that is. I do. Yeah. And so here's another thing. These are more where you were. That's a fake intellectualism. Like, Chris Kelly's dad, Sean Kelly, who was a writer for the National Lampoon, who I'd met briefly, and we were talking about comedy, and he said Dennis Miller fearlessly attacking trivia. Right. So funny. Still. Yeah. And then here's another thing I just thought was funny of where you were. You wrote, I'm here reading Wilhelm Reich and listening to the Verve collection. And I'm going to have to talk to people who worked as a temp all day. And about some of the stuff you said, part of the Luna trip is people embracing their marginal existence or how they use their free time and indulging their liberty. And then you said it's hard to take into consideration what liberty really is. And we had this long interview, and I could almost only had one quote I could use. Right. Because it was really... I was out there? Abstract. Yeah. Here's one that you said, and then we'll get to the stuff that I think led to that is similar to what you do now. This one I actually wrote WTF next to it. Okay. Ironically. Let me see if I can explain it. Okay. It's hard to do comedy that makes an impact. Discussions of morality evaporate. We're evolving into perfect consumers, and history is a pool of references. In that context, it's impossible to speak in a human voice. Well, that makes sense to me. That what I was reacting to was that everything on the internet and everything that's coming at you no longer has a historical context. So there is no narrative of time. You're just dealing with bits and pieces, which I think is, I'm not going to say prophetic, but it is what content is and what content implies. And that, as perfect consumers, content is what we consume, and it is all anyone talks about. Content. Yeah. So I think that was sort of me reacting to the fact that there was no historical narrative to anything anymore, and it was breaking down. And that is pretty prophetic, because that's exactly what's happening now. So I think what I was experiencing is that, if you don't have some foundation in either a personal history or point of references that sort of define you or your outlook, how do you talk like humans? That makes sense. Yeah. I still think about these things. No, it's amazing, because I was wondering if you know what you had said. So this is what it was interesting is what you liked about Luna was the type of intimacy makes it interesting for you. So, which is kind of what you have now. And you liked it because it was more like having a real conversation. Right. Here, which you were attracted to. And you said, I'd like to have the opportunity to have more of those. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Isn't it great? And then you said, let's see. Taking the freedom to indulge, having that freedom. It seemed like you wanted the freedom to indulge, to have on stage. Yeah. Like the thing that Luna gave me was that, because I would force myself not to construct material, but to work through ideas that I was thinking about, like that idea of perfect consumers and whatnot. Because I was very hung up on that. Because at that time I was putting a lot of stuff into my brain that was sort of, postmodern theory and stuff like that, and trying to process it through my own emotions. So yeah, the freedom to just, be in the present and talk about now was very important to me. I wanted to be emotionally available in a very real and present way as a performer, doing comedy.
which is sort of antithetical to that. And there's only been a couple of guys that did that. Pryor might be the only one where you really felt that this was an emotionally risky undertaking for this guy. And that his sense of that, what I got from him was really what I aspired to over being an entertainer, was the ability to live it, to have it be a kind of a life or death situation up there.
Yeah, it's funny because you mentioned that it's fascinating the kind of threads, because we talked about Pryor and that.
Yeah.
And that.
So I have some consistency.
You have some consistency, and I was thinking, and maybe it's the critic of me psychoanalyzing stuff. I was thinking like, the Lorne Michaels stuff that's gone on here, and I was thinking there's some point where you're maybe making him your dad, and like there was this rejection that needs to be. It just did the interview. Right. Yeah, I heard that because it made me think about. I felt he was evasive. On the question. He started talking about how he was talking about
why he didn't give me the job.
Yeah, first he talked about like how network TV was like the railroad of what the fuck does that have to do with the question,
right?
And then no, you would have been new, and I was trying to protect you from that new thing. Like that was, I felt like that was.
He did his best to try to be my dad as best he could in that moment, and not hurt my feelings too much. I did get a lot of closure, but I had it a bit before going in. I made it very large, but I did feel that he showed up for me,
right? But what's great, what I love. And again, this might there are these moments that are really impactful in your life.
Yeah.
And I heard one person listen, he said, it's so narcissistic, he's talking about himself. I'm like, no, if you talk to someone, why would you not ask if they remembered, why not ask Keith Richards if he remembered you? That's really what you want to ask.
Sure.
Or to ask Lorne Michaels what he remembered about this moment, or.
Yeah.
So, like, why not ask that and get some resolution?
That's actually not narcissistic. Yeah. That is saying, I didn't make it about me.
Right.
I just was looking for a point of connection.
Right. And the great thing is now they remember. Even if they forgot then, now it's become an impactful moment in your life. You made it exist.
Oh, well, I'm glad that I was true to myself. That, to me, hearing that stuff, some of that stuff was raw, and clearly I was trying to resolve some things intellectually, but I seem to be pretty true to myself.
Yeah, it's funny. I'll read one more. I'll see if there's anything. Right. I just wrote it. It was a hard lesson to learn that alternative comedy, I guess, doesn't work on a big stage. That's what we were talking about. I do bits and personal stories. They're hard to do on TV. People need closure. If you expose yourself, people don't know where to laugh. How do you get closure on a spot that's personal?
That's true.
And again, I think that's kind of
that was an ongoing thing. But it did become sort of as I got older and more adept at the craft of comedy, that was really resolved by an application of craft.
Right. Right. Yeah. But it's fascinating because I think all those things he wanted, the freedom to express, not to worry about where people are laughing, to take emotional risks, is what you're doing here, probably why it's done what it's done.
Oh, fuck. It's so nice to hear that, Neil. It's so nice to know that I did know what I wanted.
Yeah. You weren't as dumb as and naive and bitter as he thought.
Well, thanks for sharing that.
Thanks.
That was my talk with Neil Strauss. I thought it was pretty intense, but there's a lot of information in that book. Some of it is frightening information, but he did his homework. So if you're interested in that stuff, The Truth, an uncomfortable book about relationships, is available now. What else can I tell you? Imagine an occupied world where everyone must choose a side. If your city was no longer your own, who would you trust with your life? Where would you run? And what would you risk to save the ones you love? Starring Josh Holloway from Lost and Sarah Wayne Callie's Colony. A new original series premieres Thursday, January 14th at 10, 9 Central, only on USA Network. Go to colonytv.com for more. My name's Marc. I have a website, WTFpod.com. You can go there, pick up some justcoffee.coop. You can get some T-shirts, I think. You can maybe get a poster. You can get on the mailing list. You can check the episode guide to see who's been on this show, and perhaps move your way over to howl.fm for the archives. That stuff. And New Year's coming. I'll talk to you in the new year if you don't listen to the New Year's Eve broadcast, the New Year's Eve day broadcast. We're going to have a nice, not a full hour with me and Bill Burr, but a nice chunk of me and Bill Burr, and then I think we're going to do some highlights, doing them year-end highlights things. That'll be fun, right? Oh. Boomer lives!